The humid air of the Louisiana bayou was replaced by the salty, sharp tang of the coastal breeze as I stood on the porch of my new temporary home. My coastal cabin, stark and solitary against the vast expanse of the ocean, felt foreign to me. The forested and mountainous terrains were my usual hunting grounds, but this time, the hunt led me to the tumultuous and mysterious depths of the ocean. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a fiery glow on the restless sea. My rugged face, scarred from countless encounters with beasts of the land, remained stoic as I read through the desperate message from a small fishing village nearby. The words were hurried, scrawled with fear and urgency. Disappearing. Deaths. Creature from the deep. Please help. The villagers spoke of a mermaid, but not the enchanting kind from bedtime stories. This one was vicious, with a taste for human flesh. Intrigued and concerned, I set down the note and began gathering my specialized aquatic hunting gear. My cabin was a repository of weaponry and tools, each with a story, each stained with the blood of the monstrous creatures I hunted. Harpoons, diving equipment, sonar devices, all meticulously checked and packed. Arriving at the village, I felt the weight of fear that hung over the place like a dark cloud. The villagers, eyes wide with terror, clung to their superstitions like lifelines. I interviewed the locals, piecing together fragmented accounts of the attacks. The descriptions were chilling. A beautiful creature with flowing hair and haunting eyes, whose enchanting song lured fishermen to their doom, only to drag them beneath the waves and tear them apart. As night fell, the village's atmosphere turned oppressive. The sea, once a source of livelihood, had become a harbinger of death. I set up my equipment, the ocean's rhythmic pounding against the shore, a constant reminder of the dangers that lurked within. I chose a vantage point overlooking the beach, where the moonlight painted silver streaks on the waves. The first sign came as a distant, melodic hum, barely audible over the crashing surf. My trained ears caught it immediately. I adjusted my sonar device, the screen flickering with life as it began to pick up the underwater movements. The hum grew louder, more hypnotic, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. It was as if the song was calling to the primal parts of my mind, urging me to step into the ocean's embrace. I shook off the feeling and focused on the task at hand. I'd set bait, chunks of fish and bloody rags, hoping to draw the creature close. The hum intensified, and suddenly, the water's surface broke. A head emerged, surrounded by a halo of moonlit hair, eyes glistening with predatory hunger. My heart pounded as I watched the creature, its ethereal beauty juxtaposed with the menacing aura it exuded. It moved with an otherworldly grace, closer to the shore, its gaze fixed on the bait. The moment stretched, tension crackling in the air. My muscles coiled, ready to spring into action. But the mermaid was faster. With a fluid motion, it lunged at the bait, jaws snapping shut with a force that sent chills through me. I fired my harpoon, the sharp projectile slicing through the air and striking the creature's side. It let out a shriek, a sound that was both human and animal, filled with rage and pain. The water erupted in chaos as the mermaid thrashed, its blood mingling with the seawater. I pulled on the harpoon line, trying to drag the creature closer, but it fought with a ferocity that left me breathless. With a powerful flick of its tail, it snapped the line and vanished into the depths, leaving me on the shore, drenched and shaken. The first encounter had been brief but intense, and I knew I was dealing with a far more dangerous foe than I'd anticipated. The villagers' descriptions hadn't done justice to the creature's speed and strength. I returned to the village, where the frightened faces of the locals greeted me. As dawn broke, I assessed the damage to my gear and my strategy. The mermaid had retreated, but it would be back. Of that I was certain. The hunt had only just begun, and the call of the deep was stronger than ever. In the light of day, the village seemed almost peaceful, but the fear was still palpable. I steeled myself for the next encounter, knowing that the true battle lay beneath the waves. In the dark, uncharted depths where the mermaid reigned supreme. I stared at the shattered remnants of my harpoon line, a cold fury burning in my chest. The mermaid was far more dangerous than I'd imagined. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the restless sea, I prepared for the night ahead. My mind raced with strategies, each one more desperate than the last. By the time the moon rose, I was ready. I had reinforced my gear, replacing the broken harpoon line with one made of steel. I had also set up an array of underwater traps and nets, hoping to catch the mermaid off guard. I armed myself with a variety of weapons, from explosive charges to an underwater shotgun loaded with specially made rounds. As I boarded my small boat, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The village behind me was silent, its inhabitants huddled in their homes, too terrified to venture out after dark. I pushed off from the shore, the boat slicing through the water with eerie smoothness. The ocean was a black mirror, reflecting the cold light of the moon. I navigated to the spot where I'd had my first encounter with the mermaid. I dropped anchor and deployed my bait, chunks of fish, blood-soaked rags, and a recording of a woman's scream, amplified to echo across the water. I hoped the combination would lure the creature out from its hiding place. Minutes stretched into an hour, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. I scanned the water, my sonar equipment beeping steadily. Then, I heard it. A faint, haunting hum, growing louder with each passing second. My muscles tensed as the hum turned into a melody, beautiful and terrible, wrapping around my mind like a vice. The water rippled, and the mermaid emerged, her eyes glowing with a malevolent light. My breath caught in my throat as I saw the full extent of her monstrous beauty. Her hair floated around her head like a dark halo, and her lips curled into a predatory smile, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. "Come on, you bitch," I muttered, gripping my harpoon gun tightly. The mermaid moved with a fluid grace, her eyes never leaving me. She circled the boat, her song growing louder, more insistent. I felt a tug at the edge of my mind, a pull to join her in the depths. I shook it off and fired my harpoon, the projectile slicing through the air and embedding itself in the mermaid's shoulder. She screamed, a sound that was part fury, part pain. Blood sprayed from the wound, staining the water red. I pulled on the line, dragging her closer, but the mermaid fought back with a ferocity that left me breathless. She lunged at the boat, claws extended, and I barely managed to dodge her attack. I yelled, grabbing my underwater shotgun. I fired, the blast tearing through the night and hitting the mermaid square in the chest. She let out another scream, this one filled with rage, and disappeared beneath the waves. I didn't have time to catch my breath. I dove into the water, my equipment weighing me down, but my determination driving me forward. The ocean closed around me, a cold, suffocating embrace. I activated my underwater lights, the beams cutting through the murky darkness. The mermaid was waiting for me. She struck with blinding speed, her claws raking across my arm. Pain exploded through me, but I gritted my teeth and fired my shotgun again. The blast hit the mermaid, sending her reeling, but she recovered quickly and lunged at me, her teeth bared. I managed to get my knife out just in time. I slashed at the mermaid, the blade slicing through flesh and bone. Blood clouded the water, but she kept coming, her eyes burning with an unholy light. She wrapped her arms around me, her claws digging into my back, and I felt a sickening tear as she ripped through muscle and sinew. I gasped, pain and rage fueling my movements. I headbutted the mermaid, the impact stunning her for a moment. I used the opportunity to plant an explosive charge on her side and swam away as fast as I could. The explosion rocked the water, sending shockwaves through the depths. I felt the force of it in my bones, but I kept swimming, my vision blurring from the pain. I surfaced, gasping for air, and looked back to see the mermaid thrashing in the water, her body torn apart by the blast. I dragged myself back onto the boat, blood streaming from my wounds. I watched as the mermaid's movements grew weaker, her song turning into a gurgling cry. Finally, she went still, her lifeless body sinking into the abyss. "Stay dead, you fucking monster," I muttered, collapsing onto the deck. I had survived the encounter, but I knew the hunt was far from over. The mermaid might be dead, but the horrors of the deep still lurked in the shadows, waiting for their next victim. My body ached with every movement. My wounds throbbed, and the salt water stung like fire. But I couldn't afford to rest. I knew the mermaid's death was only the beginning. Her kin would come, driven by vengeance and hunger. I needed to finish this, to rid the waters of the nightmare that haunted the village. Back on shore, I wasted no time. I patched up my wounds as best I could and prepared for the final battle. My arsenal was ready: harpoons, underwater explosives, and a new weapon. A modified spear gun, designed to deliver a lethal dose of poison. I loaded my boat with everything I could carry and set out once more into the dark, unforgiving sea. The moon hung high in the sky, casting an eerie glow on the water's surface. The ocean was deceptively calm, a stark contrast to the storm raging within me. I navigated to the entrance of the underwater cave system I had discovered in my research. This was where the mermaids nested, where they felt safe. It was time to bring the fight to them. As I approached the cave, I deployed my traps. Underwater cameras and sonar devices were positioned strategically around the entrance, their feeds transmitted to my boat. I watched the monitors intently, every shadow, every movement scrutinized. The first sign of trouble came as a flicker on the sonar, then another, and another. My heart raced as I saw the shapes moving toward the cave entrance. They were coming. I gripped my spear gun and dove into the water, the cold biting into my skin. The cave's entrance loomed ahead, a yawning maw of darkness. I activated my underwater lights and swam inside, the beams cutting through the murk. The sonar signals were clearer now, the shapes more defined. I could see them, mermaids, their eyes glowing with an unholy light, their bodies moving with predatory grace. I fired the first harpoon, the projectile striking one of the mermaids in the chest. She shrieked, blood spraying from the wound, and thrashed violently. The others reacted instantly, surging toward me with terrifying speed. I fired again and again, each shot hitting its mark, but the mermaids were relentless. One of them reached me, claws raking across my chest, tearing through flesh and muscle. I screamed, the pain blinding, but I fought back, slashing with my knife. Blood mingled with water as I struck, the mermaid's blood mixing with my own. She fell back, writhing in agony, but another took her place, teeth bared and eyes blazing with fury. I fired my spear gun, the poison-tipped spear sinking into the mermaid's throat. She convulsed, her eyes rolling back, and then went limp, sinking into the darkness. But there were more. So many more. I could feel my strength waning, my vision blurring, but I couldn't stop. I wouldn't stop. The mermaids swarmed me, their claws and teeth tearing into my flesh. I fought with everything I had, every ounce of strength, every bit of skill. I planted explosive charges on the cave walls, the beeping timers a grim countdown to the end. The mermaid's screams echoed in the confined space, a cacophony of rage and pain. I set the last charge and pushed myself away, swimming toward the cave entrance. My body was a mess of wounds, blood trailing behind me like a crimson cloud. The mermaids followed, their rage unending, but I was faster. I reached the entrance and activated the detonator. The explosion rocked the cave, a deafening roar that reverberated through the water. I was thrown forward by the force, my body slamming into the rocks. I tasted blood, felt my consciousness slipping, but I forced myself to swim, to reach the surface. I broke through the water, gasping for air, the boat a distant silhouette against the moonlit sky. With the last of my strength, I pulled myself aboard and collapsed onto the deck. The cave entrance was a boiling mass of water and debris. The mermaid's screams silenced at last. I lay there, staring up at the stars, my body broken, but my spirit unyielding. I had won. The village was safe. The mermaids were no more. I closed my eyes, exhaustion washing over me, and let the darkness take me. When I awoke, it was to the gentle rocking of the boat and the faces of my saviors in the first light of dawn. My wounds were severe, but I was alive. I was brought back to the village, where the terrified but hopeful faces of the villagers greeted me. They helped me ashore, their gratitude palpable, but I knew I couldn't stay. There were always more monsters. Always another hunt. Back at my coastal cabin, the weight of the recent battle clung to me. My body still ached from the wounds, but the village was safe. As I cleaned my gear, preparing for what might come next, a new message arrived, sealed with urgency. I opened it and read the stark, desperate plea. An isolated research facility in the Amazon. The dead are rising. We need you. Zombies. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. The dense, uncharted rainforest would be an entirely different battlefield. I packed my gear, flamethrower, machete, and incendiary grenades. I booked the next flight to Brazil, my mind already strategizing. As the plane soared into the sky, I stared out the window, the vast ocean receding behind me. The hunt never ended. From the deep sea to the heart of the jungle, monsters waited in every shadow. The Amazon awaited, and with it, a new horror to confront.